It's not hard to really see what's going on in the world and make a judgment based on what's happening in the world because all you really have to do is not even look at the world, but look at the people within the world. And, the world itself sort of just exists, right? And the people within it are making up this world. So we better look at the people within it. But better yet, what people do with the world around them is based upon their mentalities, right? What they're thinking. And so the best thing I would say to look at would be, well, people's mentalities. And believe it or not, I think when you look at those mentalities, it tells you pretty much everything. If somebody's in fear, well, okay, they're going to want control. If somebody has no principles of their own, of how they look at the world, philosophically speaking, then no, they're not going to have this ground to which they stand upon an issue when it's confronted upon them. If they're being given an offer with benefits coming their way with convenience, they may take it because they have no principles that would say, well, otherwise, or they don't have enough of a reason so to say otherwise. And really, if you can just look at people's mentalities as such, it just tells you everything. It could be the person who's lazy, who doesn't want to do anything, or somebody who is lazy but doesn't want to be lazy, who wants to do something. And then looking at the mentalities behind that, and you could say, well, that's psychology, that's psychiatry. Yeah, it is those fields, and perhaps we talk about that when it comes to changing the world, when it comes to why things are the way they are. But the point is that while those mentalities can be addressed through those fields of medicine, they can also just be addressed by everyday people. I mean, I'm sure you are aware of your own mentalities, are you not? You may be aware of where, you may be thinking wrongly or may be thinking erratically, where you may be thinking not at all because you're distracting yourself or playing a game or watching a movie, etc. Right? And so if we apply that then to other people and say, okay, we're the outsider, we're looking upon their life, we're going to see some things that they didn't see about themselves and the way they conduct themselves, whether it be through word or through action. You can tell then what is going inside their own mind. Now, you may not be able to make a full judgment of that individual, of course not, but you can pick up on the signs and start to paint a picture. And I think a lot of people do this mentally without even, putting into the words like I am with this video. But just because, we do that automatically most of the time when we develop our reason does not mean, well, we shouldn't pay attention to it and say, well, we can actually develop it further when we do recognize it. Because there's a lot of people who may not look at it as such, to say, well, I'm going to put myself in somebody else's shoes, but I'm also going to look at the mentality that they have rather than what they're actually doing. Because I can look at their actions, their demeanors, but maybe that's the way they are. What's even more important is really what they're thinking, because that's what's going to determine everything else anyways. And maybe, the physical can sometimes be a lie. Somebody could be heavy, they can be skinny, and they can have a totally different disease, totally different circumstance than you think. You don't even know their circumstance, so it's really hard to judge or make a correct judgment of them nonetheless. So when we look at their mentalities, we'll tell something else. So, for example, let's look at today's world, right? A lot of people are following orders. There's a mentality right off the bat. It doesn't even matter what they're doing. Okay, let's leave that out of the equation. The fact that people are willing to just do whatever is told of them to do, or whatever some mainstream institutions tell them to do, even though they know nothing about themselves, and they're willing to take something which they know nothing about, but they just trust anyways, to tell you something. The fact that somebody's doctor tells them to take a certain drug and they'll do it tells you something. That is what I'm particularly focusing on here when I say the mentalities tell us everything. Because I don't even need to know what's happening. I don't even need to know why it is, how it came about, any of that. I don't need to know any details. Because just by looking at the way people respond is enough to tell me of what I should do. If people are acting in such a manner of ignorance, or such a manner of I'm just going to do whatever comes, then it's not one that I want to follow. But if I see people are acting out of knowledge and they're sharing with others and they have these complex lists of reasons and they seem like they're somebody who doesn't just do something because they're being told to do it, then I'm really going to consider it. Why? Because it makes sense. Not somebody who doesn't really want to create any sense because they're not using it. They're suppressing it. They're saying, you make the decisions for me. I'm not going to use my senses. So that mentality tells us much. The people who are using their minds versus the people who aren't. And I don't want to make this this person and this group versus that person and that group. But it naturally happens if you have certain people using their human nature and other people not. Certain people with certain mentalities and other people not. And not only that, but large margins of people within those certain types of mentalities. If it wasn't so large, I wouldn't be able to make such generalizations as I may do. And I don't want to make such generalizations, and I want to have faith in all people. But there are certain mentalities that have to be addressed and have to be recognized, and they come about through a lot of different means, through cultures and through music, through art, so many different things that I can't pinpoint and say it is one thing. That's often where we get ourselves in trouble, is we want to pinpoint what it is, and maybe that's on our path toward understanding more about it, but really, could we just, instead of looking at all those fine details, just look at the mentality alone? And I think that will tell us a lot more about the world that we live in. Thank you very much for listening. This is Corey Edmund Angelot. So the next time you see somebody doing something, you're like, why are they doing that? But they don't really have a reason why. But they come up with a bunch of excuses why. Or they're doing it because they were told of unnatural facts, as I talk about in my book Sapientia Naturae, then yes, it's something that we should probably stay away from. Thank you very much for watching. This is Corey Edmund Angelot. Nature's the answer.